many people feel like relationships are complex and complicated and convoluted and frustrated that they're never going to get it right. But the main reasons why that occurs is because they're functioning in illusions of love, right? And so in my book, I say this one line that I think is like fundamental, which is that I feel like 100% of the problems that we go through are because people just don't really understand what love is, right? And then when they don't understand what love is, what they'll do is they'll take their experiences. We were just talking about the soul. They'll take their experiences, and then what they'll do is they'll filter love through their experiences. And then now love becomes, right, the outcome of their experiences instead of using love, right, and allowing their experiences to be filtered through that.
Welcome to the Tea On, where we sip tea and we talk about things, preferably things that matter. I only have water today. We're just going to stay regular hydrated. But to be honest, honestly, I'm in Florida, so it's a little too hot for tea right now. But I am so grateful to be accompanied by someone who is such a bright and abundant being, and to have such a well thought out mind, aside from the energy that you bring into any room, is something that is so magical, so second to none. And I'm so excited to sort of pick your brain a little bit about the subject that we're going to talk about today. But before I give you space to introduce yourself, I do want to note that you are an author, a recording artist, and what's most important today, a relationship coach. And you do so with grace while remaining yourself and giving the truth, but not in a harsh way, just in a necessary way. So without further ado, please let the people know who you are.
Thank you. Well, you did such a lovely introduction, but my name is Sharla K. I am, as she said, an author, performer, and a relationship coach. When I'm on the stage, I go by Sharla K. But of course, when I'm doing anything else, it's Sharla K. And I don't know, what else do you want me to say? Do you want me to say any little bit, I don't know, about my book or background?
Yeah,
I don't know.
just what you want the people to know. Yeah.
Okay. Well, as far as my music is out, that's great. Sharla K, if you want to look up any of that, you can go to Google Sharla K with an S, not a C. And really the relationship coaching, I started my company, Interask Coaching. It's been going on 6 years now. And I also have a podcast that I do that's called Forever Friends Podcast, where we focus on building relationships that are rooted in faith, purpose, and friendship. And really all of that started just out of extreme gratitude and gratefulness for the relationship that I have been in for literally more life than I've been by myself. I've been with my husband. I met my husband at 13. So the term Forever Friends kind of came from that, because we've grown together in that way. So we've been together for 22 years, married for 16. So that's really what made me start it. And people just actually wanted to get coaching and things like that. And it really was my husband that pushed me and said, okay, do it. And I was like, okay.
No. Wow. It's something that I think is just so immediately authentic, because you're not coming from a space of like, well, I've seen it, I understand it, but you're in it, you're living in it, you're applying what you're teaching, and that's important.
Absolutely, and that's the only reason why I do it is because of that. I feel like it's more of like, I feel like God called me to do it, so that's why I do it. Honestly, I would have never thought that I would have been doing it looking back younger. Sometimes I'm still floored, like, what are you doing? So it's more of that. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I graduated a communications degree, but if I told you that's the reason why I did it, that would be a total lie. That's not the reason why. So.
Got you. Yeah, like I said, sometimes your purpose kind of shows up in the most organic and out of the blue.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Absolutely.
And I'm so grateful that you followed that calling, that you followed that divine will, because that's, I think, one of the many reasons that we're here together today, because as I was commenting to you earlier, I co-host a lot of conversation parties. And typically a question that has been coming up, especially more recently, has been this idea of, when you are settling into life and settling into the relationship that you want to commit to, sometimes this question kind of poses of whether it makes sense to settle with someone who fits as a life partner, or to follow your heart and to follow being, with a soulmate. And so I know that you have sort of like a different viewpoint on that, and I really wanted to pick your brain on it, because I feel like a lot of people, especially people in my generation, that are sort of like having this pressure to figure out life and to figure out what life looks like in a relationship, they're kind of teetering and tottering between like following your heart and following what makes sense. And so opening up this conversation, you know, what is your viewpoint on that whole concept?
Okay, yeah. So I have a very, I don't know if it's an unorthodox point of view about it. Let me not start with that. I guess it's more maybe spiritually rooted and based. I'll say that. But I think before going into what a soulmate is, I think we have to understand what the soul is. And for me, my belief is that the soul is what I would call the seat of our emotions. So it's basically the soul is what takes in all that you're experiencing here, that you are taking in from your five senses, goes to your soul, right? So it's almost like, I feel like it records data. It records whatever legacy and experiences you're having here, right? And so I know sometimes the way it's taught soulmates is that you have this one person and that the soul just wants what it wants and it continues to seek after that person. But I kind of look at it a little bit differently. I feel like just in the way, you know, like you have family and I have a family and we are predisposed to certain things, you know, like if you go to the doctor and they ask you, what's your family history? Because they want to know if cancer, diabetes, or high blood pressure or anything else is in the line of your history, because there's a chance, right? We have to watch out that it could come up in your health, right? So in that same sense, I don't necessarily think we can disconnect what happens in our soul trauma, right? And so it's interesting that you asked me this question, because on my podcast, someone did just bring this up to me. And what I told them was that, you know, when I think of soulmate, I don't necessarily want to mate with someone's soul, only because when you're dealing with people, sorry, something came on my screen. When you're dealing with people, life has so many unpredictable challenges and circumstances and situations. And a lot of it sometimes is trauma, right, to people. And I think depending on who's on the seat, right? So just imagine that the soul is a car, basically, right? So the soul is the vehicle, right? But you have to have someone in that seat. So the way that I look at it is that you can have three, let's say, entities on that seat. For me, I think you can have God's spirit on that seat, right? And that will allow you to filter through whatever trauma experiences that you're going through, or even just experiences point blank, right? It'll shape your perspective. Or you can have, let's call it negative energy. Some people call it the devil, right? Whatever you want to call it. And it will have you experience, right? It'll have you record whatever you're experiencing in a different way. And sometimes you can have your own will, right? Sometimes our soul will long after something that's just not good for us, right? So sometimes just because you think you like something, you want something, doesn't mean it's good for you. And so I think that's why I kind of shied away from, maybe, I don't want to say the typical way that they talk about the soul. The idea that it wants what it wants, because it's the seat of your emotions. It's where your emotions sit, and it will fuel your actions. But you have to understand that there's something else that's fueling it. You know, so to me, I think depending on who you have in that seat is who you're going to mate with. So I don't think it's just particularly one person. I think that whoever's on that seat is who you're going to mate with. And I think just like we have patterns, life situational patterns that you can see literally in a generational line in a family, it can be the same thing, because one thing that I do believe is our soul remembers what happens here. So in that sense, as far as people feeling like soulmates in that way, I think that's true. But then it would just take someone changing, right, the culture or the traditions of their family to now put somebody else on that seat. And then if you have two people who say, okay, well, I'm putting the spirit of truth, the spirit of God here, then that's the person that they're going to, you know what I mean? They leave open the opportunity to have an emotional, spiritual, mental, deep connection with where they're knitted together. So that's in a nutshell.
No, I absolutely, I love that. I love that perspective, especially like me being so deeply embedded into spirituality. I can understand it. And I feel like I've never really, I never dissected the concept, keeping in mind how I define the soul, because I think that that plays such a pivotal role, as you just mentioned. You know, it's like, where are you in that regard before you can even show up to something that is between two people, which also brings it to this idea of like, you kind of need to be healed, or at least in a certain space of healing, before you can even have that debate with yourself. And that poses the question of, do you think that somebody can heal while sharing themselves in a relationship? Because I've seen both sides play out, you know what I mean, in terms of like people needing to be in their solitude in order to fix their stuff and really face their own demons and their wounds and their traumas. And there's other people who I feel like thrive when they're able to do it within partnership and within that support. So what's your perspective on that?
You are hitting like almost every topic I've had recently in my last 3 podcasts. Yeah, it's so interesting. Someone just asked me that question. Yeah. And the way that I look at it, and I'll give you a personal experience, because I think those, to me, come across best to people, and it's authentic. So for me, I grew up without my mom. My mom struggled with mental illness for most of my life, and my father passed away when I was 7. Right. And so I had a very tumultuous childhood growing up. And of course, any child growing, I mean, I had my sister, so I never really felt lonely, but I definitely felt abandoned, right? Because my sister's not my mother or my father, even though I have her. Right. And so I remember coming to this point, like approaching, becoming a teenager, 12, 13-ish. I can't remember the exact age, but I know it was somewhere in between that time. And it's just like where we were talking about, and I was saying that there are patterns that reoccur, right? If things aren't, if there isn't someone in the family that's conscious, that changes the trajectory, right, of what's going on or what has been happening. So I can literally feel like all of this negative energy on one side, right? That if I choose to go in that direction, that then I would perpetuate further, right, what has already been happening and how it's affected my life. And then on the other side, somehow there's this just warm light and love, right? That's how I identify it. And I just remember in that moment saying, you know what, I'm just gonna choose the warm light and love. And the biggest decision and why it was such a pivotal moment for me is because in my heart and in my consciousness, I said, okay, if my mom and my father was here to love me in the way that I felt like I should be loved, where would it be coming from anyway? And to me, I always say, anyone who comes to my coaching or my podcast, is that I feel like God is love. Any goodness you see in this world, then it's being fueled by that, right? So then what I'm really searching for is love. Now, if I detach the form of what I feel love should come in, then I'll be okay, right? So in that moment, I just said, God, you know what? I'm gonna let you give me all the angels you want to throw my way. However you want to introduce, right? Love, however you want to introduce yourself to me, I'll take it. I won't be so restrictive and so, stubborn and strong-willed. And some people are like, oh, Sharla, that's not stubborn or strong-willed or even selfish to say that you want your love. It's natural. But at the same time, if that's not the cards that's dealt to me, and I still say this is where it must come from, then I block out love, which is the essential thing of what I'm longing for and I'm desiring, right? And then I can't even really tap into the love that already exists inside of me. So once I did that, when I say that every single void that was inside of me was completely gone and has never come back ever again. Now, not to say that I didn't go through situations and circumstances in life, but every time I went through a situation or a circumstance, that love never left. Right. So I just wanted to kind of put out my story in that way as a leading example. So when it comes to recovering and healing, that's what we were talking about in my podcast. I strongly believe that our relationships will always be a healing ground. I believe God gives our relationships as a healing ground, right? But there's and I actually had one of my friends, Dr. George James, he came on my show, and he was saying that I think, not everyone's like you, Sharla. Most people are in recovery, right? If you have somebody who's, had drug addiction, alcoholism, they go through recovery, right? And when you talk to that person, they could be sober for like 20 years, 15 years, and they'll tell you like, but it's day by day, moment by moment, right? Because they don't want to relapse. And so I think when it comes to healing, it's one of those miraculous things that can happen either individually or collectively in a relationship. I think what you have to watch out for is something like what you said in the beginning when we were talking about soulmates, when we're trying to understand something, but we're not understanding the root of the thing. Because if you don't understand the root of thing, no matter how hard you strive to get greater impact or make greater impact, or, you're not going to get the most optimal, maximum experience out of it. So I think that's where it comes, where you're meeting someone. Does this person really understand what true love is? Because no matter what, if they don't understand what that is, or even if they're not seeking to understand that, then no matter what they do for you or do with you, you're still going to get not the best outcome. Let's put it like that, because you have to start from the root, so I would say yes, in a long form, that someone can heal in a relationship, because I believe healing is available to us at all times.
Yes.
But unfortunately, in order for healing is a miracle, in my opinion, right? But in order for miracles to happen, I think we just have to acknowledge how they're happening on a daily basis, and I think maybe miracles and healing is rare just because we don't revere or honor the miraculous nature of our life on a day-to-day basis. So then you can't compound what we would so-called call the more, grandiose, bigger miracles, when it's really not, because the biggest miracle is the sustaining of your life, right? Every single day. So that's what I would say. I definitely, and just know, whoever is listening, you're going to, I don't care how much you worked on yourself. I don't care how much work you've done. The person is there to see your blind spot. So be ready for that person to see areas that you did not know. Yes. And you kind of have to drop your guards in that way to know that person is necessary in that way. So absolutely.
So, oh my God, you brought up several incredibly impactful points there. But that last one being that oftentimes, if anything, the relationship itself can serve as sort of like the trigger for that healing. Sometimes you can read all these self-help books and then you do all of the work that you feel like you need to do, and like you said, it's that blind spot that you don't even realize is worth sort of fleshing out until you're being mirrored by your partner, right? We as human beings are all mirrors of each other, and we can reflect what we're projecting, what we are missing, what we are seeking. And I think that's a beautiful point that you bring up. And also just, oh my God, I wish I was taking notes, honestly, because the idea of seeing every day as a miracle, I think in itself attracts more miracles, because you aren't differentiating it away from just sheer existence, which in itself is magic. And lastly, what I have to comment on is just the idea of asking for love to arrive in whichever way is available to you to heal.
That is key. I think that's key, because I think a lot of pain and heartache that people experience in relationships, not just intimate ones, but familial ones, professional ones, all around, even within themselves, is that form. And so that's why it's like one of the biggest moments in my life, because once I could detach that, and for me it was so big because those are the two essential people. Those are the people who show you, right, what love is, relationship is. And for me to be able to kind of say, just, freely, I'll let them go, and understand that they have a backstory, right? Understand that they have a backstory, in that even though they're my parents, that wasn't their only purpose here, right? It wasn't just to be my mother and my father. They have their own storyline, and for me to honor and respect that and understand that it's not a personal thing. It's
Yes.
not a personal thing. You know what I mean? So that I think is one of the biggest. I often say in my podcast that selfishness will mask itself as love. And I think for people, when you hear selfish, they're like, oh, I'm not selfish. I'm not a selfish person. I'll give to anyone. Listen to that. But I think, again, it'll mask itself as love, meaning that there are many people who are holding on to forms of love that they just are not choosing to let go of. Yeah. And they're not realizing that if the love that they think they want to receive from another person, that if they let the form go, that there are so many angels that God provides for them. And even before that, then you can kind of connect to the love that is already just existing inside of you. So I think it's one of the most powerful truths that I've learned in my life so far.
Yeah. Oh my God. And thank God you learned it. I work with astrology, and there's an asteroid that plays a very pivotal role in our lives called Chiron. And it comes from this mythological story, basically known as the wounded healer. And that through his suffering and through his wounds, he was able to learn how to mend and therefore become the most successful healer in his hometown. And so when I look at you, I feel like I see that same sort of storyline, someone who in you needing to learn that accepting all forms of love was the way to heal the absence of yours. You've been able to sort of serve that on a silver platter for so many people who wouldn't have been able to figure that out on their own. And so I'm so grateful to you for even sharing on my platform. And oh my gosh, but yeah, so shifting gears, I think, also playing into that though, I think a big factor in that is sort of self-awareness and being aware of the fact that there is healing that needs to be done, and being humble enough to admit that you aren't ever really, I think, at some sort of 100%, right? But I think that's something that, Gen Z and millennials have really taken on. I think we're very willing to heal familial trauma, to heal this bloodline stuff, and to stop cycles, and to really take on therapy, take on counseling, born out of necessity, yes, but also a willingness. And so that ties into two questions. But the first one will be, I think because we are so radical against, maybe norms that we've seen before us, as far as wives that have stayed more submissive for the sake of keeping everything, less hostile, and just norms that we've wanted to break for our own bravery and for our own embodiment of authenticity. I wonder what structures are we also breaking down that maybe are meant to be broken down when it comes to relationships, right? Because a lot of people argue monogamy is a societal construct, or, there's now all these couples that are now, they live together and they have families, but they stay in separate master bedrooms because they realize that human beings need space. And so I apologize for the convoluted question, but basically,
no, it's fine.
What ideals of relationships do you think maybe more societally bred that it's okay for us to sort of start stepping away from? Have you seen that at all, or do you feel like it's individual?
So is your question as far as what are certain things that need to be shed in relationships to make sure that we're having authentic ones? Is that your question?
Right, yeah, just basically the things that I think we all are naturally are trying to step away from, but what I think a lot of people can sort of tie themselves to needing to be in these relationships because they see that as what is the norm. And so what are kind of some of the things that we can start stepping away from that just aren't really authentic to human relationships?
Oh, wow, that is a loaded question.
It is, and if you don't have an answer,
I think there are a lot of illusions of love all throughout, right? All from Generation Z, from many generations before. And I think if trying to answer that question to the best of my ability would be just breaking down all illusions of love and building the right foundation that's necessary. So when I say illusions of love, I mean going back to understanding what true love is. And to me, it's hard, to speak about love without speaking about God, because I just believe that God is love, right? And so, and knowing and understanding, from being in a relationship that I've been in for many years and going through different things in childhood very early on and dealing with multiple couples, many people feel like relationships are complex and complicated and convoluted and frustrated that they're never going to get it right. But the main reasons why that occurs is because they're functioning in illusions of love, right? And so in my book, I say this one line that I think is like fundamental, which is that I feel like 100% of the problems that we go through are because people just don't really understand what love is, right? And then when they don't understand what love is, what they'll do is they'll take their experiences, we were just talking about the soul, they'll take their experiences, and then what they'll do is they'll filter love through their experiences. And then now love becomes, right, the outcome of their experiences. Instead of using love, right, and allowing their experiences to be filtered through that. So it would be akin to me saying back in the beginning of when we started this interview that the soul is the seat of your emotions, and you need to have something sitting there to be able to guide, right, how you navigate through this life and help you experience life in a certain way, right? So in that same sense, if someone is navigating a relationship, understanding and really letting love have be the loudest voice, be the strongest voice, have the last say so and choice, then they'll find the way that they experience love and relationships to be greater. So I think, unfortunately, when it comes to looking at society, when it comes to relationships, there has been so much toxicity, there has been so much that has gone away from what really true love is, how God created relationships to be, and divine unions, as you were bringing up in the beginning. So I think that is the main thing, is whatever illusions of love. I don't think that, unfortunately, sometimes what will happen is that when you have one generation rebel from another generation, I don't want to say it's like rebellion, but some of it is, right? Some of it is, or even just trying to figure out because you don't like what that generation did. You know, like, let's put it in a simple example. If you're a child and you're a teenager and you're growing up and you're seeing your mom, you're seeing your dad, and you're not liking how they're dealing with relationships, and you say, I'm never going to be like that. I'm never going to do that, right? And you'll find sometimes as you get older that you're ending up doing the same thing, just using a different method for it. So that's what I feel like. I feel like the illusions of love, even though you think that you're physically doing something different, principally, lesson wise, you're doing the same thing, just using a different method. So I think for any generation listening, whether it's Gen Z or anyone else, you have to go back to what's rudimentary. You have to go back to the fundamental principles. And that's what I try to offer when I deal with my couples that I'm coaching or on the podcast. What are the foundational components of a relationship? Because fundamental principles don't change, no matter how society changes, no matter how culture changes, it stays the same, right? Just like gravity. You can say you don't believe in all you want, but jump off a building, you will have to, right? So in that same sense, if you're a person thinking about relationships, if it works in science, it also works in relationships. So figure out what those are, stick to that, and then you'll experience what it truly is.
Oh my God. I can't believe you just gave me like the best answer for a question that you were acting like, I don't know. Illusions of love. So can I ask you, how would you personally define true love then? Because I think the disconnect is what people are allowing themselves to believe love is, you know? So how would you define it?
But I think I've said it like many times, God is love. Yeah, God is love, because any goodness that you, just like where we're talking about that the soul is, right? We have our soul and we have our spirit, right? Those are the things that will transcend on. We don't leave anything else here. Nothing you materially, you know, of course, your family members, if you have children, if you choose to have children, that legacy will be here. But when it comes to your individual journey here, those are the only two things that are left, right? And because your soul records everything here, right? It's got to be recording for some reason. Right? I mean, you can just think about it of how long it takes for you to get over a hurt or a trauma. It takes a while to heal, right? Because either it's sitting there in your subconscious, or it's consciously, even if you're conscious about it, still takes a while, because of how the soul can't function any other way, because that's what it's meant to do. So for me, when I say God is love, it transcends what you're dealing with here, right? It also deals with whatever happened, however you got here before you were here, right? Because we can't just think that this little small transitional time that we have here is it, because there's a spirit that's infinite inside of you, and that is infinite, and that's going to transcend on, right? So that's why I say the best way to put it in terms is that God is love. So if God is love, then even though I have my husband and he adores me and tells me I'm beautiful every day, and he can look at me once and I can tell him how he deeply loves me. But that means that now when I have to face, if I have to face, right, he goes before I go, I know that God is love. So at any moment I can tap into feeling his love. Why? Because love is beyond space, distance, and time. Why? Because God is love and God is infinite, and it's a spiritual force. It's not something in my book I say we give, it is our honor in our relationships. When we have our relationships is a sacred opportunity to give love a physical presence here, right? So those who believe in God, it's a faith thing because you can't see God. But when I look at you, if you do something and act out of love, even if I just feel love emanating from you, then I'm experiencing love, right? But you're giving me that, you're making it tangible for me, right? Or even if I sit within myself and I take a moment and I breathe and I say, oh, I feel the love that's within me, then it becomes tangible, right? But without that collective effort, right, that's the way you kind of feel it on overflow. So that's why I say that's the best way you can start there. Because if not, the selfishness, I do believe, is going to come in, because I think within our nature, even if you're a given person, you just have your own wants and your own desires, right? It's like when we were talking about understanding that person's gonna see your blind spot. The issue with that is like, I could be annoyed because I've been here for 24, 25 years, and now you tell me I don't know me. I should know me. How dare you, But why is there 7 million people here if you just needed to independently know yourself, for yourself, and by yourself? It's just, the whole independence thing is, it's an illusion. We're supposed to be functioning in love, harmony, unity, and that's what it's about. And relationships are hard for people because it chips away at that selfishness, and it chips away at the insecurities that lay hidden within you that you don't necessarily want to deal with when that person is right in front of you, So, yeah.
Wow, mind blown. I don't even know how anyone could even want to. I mean, obviously I think they're doing it subconsciously, but I don't understand how anyone could want to subscribe to a love that is rooted in illusion, when such divinity and such fulfillment comes from honoring what true love is, and like the universal and spiritual aspect of that, like connecting to something so much greater than just like the physical embodiment of two people. It's just it's, oh my God. And you put it into words so beautifully. Thank you. I think that is true love. Really, it's faith, right? It's knowing that there's something that you can't see, but it is like everywhere. It's everything. It makes it perfect.
You can't experience love without faith. Even if you're a person who would define themselves as I always mess up this atheist. Am I saying it right? I always mess up. You have the one word that you mess up all the time. Yeah, those who don't believe in God, right? I say to people, right? Some people might be shy and they're like, I don't know how to talk to someone. How do you make a true connection? I say, okay, these 3 things, right? And that's what I named my podcast, that relationships that are rooted in faith, purpose, and friendship. Because I don't care. You can go all across the world. You can go crisscross between genders. You can talk to somebody about how they honor their friendships, what they put their faith in, right? I think almost all of us have the question of, what is my purpose here, right? At some point. So those are 3 things that really anyone journeying here most likely is going to, right? Think about one moment or time. So what a lot of people are, when they describe like the honeymoon stage, you have all the butterflies and everything, and that's really faith. They have faith, right? But the faith might be misplaced in their emotions, right? But it's still faith, right? Because there's nothing that you can birth really here without faith being included in it, even if it doesn't come from per se a religious aspect or spiritual aspect, still faith in something, right? So and that's the key to connecting to love, because it's really a faith walk. Because no matter what, when you meet, you know, that the husband that's for you or someone else who's listening, it's not going to be like I always envision this 10 commandments, like this is the one for me, and then it's cemented in stone. You know what I mean? It's not like that. That person that you meet at that moment is not going to be that same person 40 years later. Right. The courageous part of love is the faithful part of it, that you're willing to say, oh my gosh, okay, this person is a person I feel like I can grow it, I can evolve it, and as we grow, we can love each other through the different conditions and things like that. But all of that takes faith. That's not, you can't just be like, oh, I see you said that from the beginning, that's what you are. So just life doesn't work like that, you know? So I think that's the easiest way. Because if we don't, let's take it out. If we don't say God is love, and that's the definition, then what I've seen happening and occurring constantly is that people come with their own definitions of it. And then it becomes very convoluted, because now you have two people coming in with two different definitions. So now you're not loving me based on my definition. You understand what I'm saying? Rather than there's this fundamental definition that we both say we're going to align to. Mm-hmm. Oh, what happened yesterday? Let's come back to the fundamental definition of what love is, and how does that function, and how does that operate? Now there's no, you get what I'm saying? It's less room for conflict, and it's less room for confusion in it, you know? So.
Oh my God. And that's, oh my God, so much needs to be communicated right off the jump, I would say. I think that's a big a big aspect of really maintaining and not wasting any time, is sort of communicating that belief, because I think it's so fundamental. You bring up such an incredible point. So anyone watching this, please write down faith, purpose, and friendship. Friendship especially, I feel like a lot of people don't talk about this, but like there's so much life fulfillment that can come from like a well-nourished friendship. I think there's so much like emphasis put on our romantic relationships, and rightfully so. I get it, you know, families and stuff like that. But I think the friendships that we have in our lives are just as important, just as nourishing, just as fulfilling, if we really are intentional with the people that we choose to share our energy and our love with. So I love that. One of the last questions that I have for you, well, actually, let me grab my charger. This will be 2 seconds, but I'll edit this out. I don't want my computer to die when I'm like in the middle of talking to you. Okay, perfect. Okay, so we're back. I'll edit that out. But one of the last questions that I was so curious to ask you is your perspective on the ways in which the internet and social media has played its role in relationships and in dating and just in overall connection. Because like I said, I'm a very fair person, and I feel like I can see all the sides of every spectrum, and I feel like social media and the internet has allowed us to learn so much about the different ways that love can show up, right? We've learned about pansexuality and homosexuality and the ways in which, you know, there are safe spaces and the ways in which we can express ourselves and our genders and our love and everything. And it's also connected us to each other in ways that we couldn't have had we been consumed or vacuumed into one physical space, you know, being able to fall in love across seas and all that beautiful stuff. But I also say the role that it's played in like instant gratification and turning people into slides, and like I think basing what we're searching for in a person on something that is very surface level and not what is actually has enough depth to be sustainable. So what's your opinion on that?
Well, you know, I think in a nutshell, what, you know, there's good seeds and bad seeds, you know, that come from it. I think one of the main negative factors is really just how much we talked about the illusions of love. You know, people can display whatever they want on social media. So I think, of course, that increases that. when
Right.
someone can feel like, let me just select the pictures that look good, the moments in my life that looks good,
Right.
and have them kind of stay within that type of realm of just elusive type of living. But what I found out, and I get the question a lot, especially, for anyone who's trying to, try to establish and cultivate friendship and genuine friendships, and find someone in this climate that we're living in right now with the pandemic and everything like that. But what I found is that I think is good about it is, like you said, you can connect with anyone from anywhere across the world. And one of the things that I've been talking to and telling my single clients or single friends is, that might not be into online dating, is that you find that right now you can go into most people are on their phones, so you can go into groups, chats, lives, and go to the ones that you're interested in, like where it's a topic you're interested in, whether it's an art you're interested in, and listen, make yourself viewed, go on, because people, they'll let you get on their lives if you're in a clubhouse chat or things like that. And that's, I think, is a really good way to meet people. One, because you know that the people who are there are like-minded people like you, right? Whereas that kind of weeds out. Whereas if you were, like, say, in a club or something, or somewhere else where you don't know the people in there, if they're in, liking the same things that you're doing. So really that kind of cut out one step for you. So I think in that way, it's good. I think you just have to think out of the box and not necessarily stay in the same frame of mind. And I also think it's good for cultivating genuine friendships, because if you can't see that person, you have to get to know them on a deeper level of connection, of communication. This is the best time to do it. Someone asked me, when should I start dating? Should I wait till the pandemic's over? I'm like, what? No, you don't do that. What, the person you're gonna decide to be with when pandemics happen, or you know what I mean, things shift in the world, you're not gonna be able to, communicate, or you want to see that that's a person that you can, develop that with now. So I think it's a good way to start. But it's just the, getting past the illusion part of it. But I think you would have to do that anyway.
That bleeds into everything. It bleeds outside of even just relationships. I think we compare our very real lives and our very real relationships to the highlight reels that people display online, and that can make us think that we're doing it wrong, or that, everyone else has it figured out. And so
absolutely,
that plays a big role in relationships. So yeah, oh my God. But like you said, it cuts out a big step, which is like, we have a shared interest and we're kind of in the same
right. You just have to think out of the box, because some people might not like online dating, but at least if you're coming, like I tell people who come to my Forever Friends podcast, I have men who come on there consistently. Like, I think has been one of the most amazing surprises for me. In my workshops, I've seen it when I was doing them physically before the pandemic occurred, but there are men who are looking for safe space to talk about love and relationships, and they are not afraid of being vulnerable. They are not afraid of showing themselves, as long as they feel like it's a safe space to do so, and that it's not so connected to, okay, well, you told me that, what does that mean, how are you going to treat me, you know what I mean? So you'd be surprised to find that. So I think just thinking out of the box in that way, and seeing what you're interested in, and seeing the people who are kind of constantly reoccurring there in that space, then get on that camera, look great.
And put on the lip gloss, honey. I love it, honestly. I've experienced every end of it. I've seen it be so successful, and I've seen it kind of like drive people a little insane. So just everything with yourself. But oh my God, this has been such an enlightening conversation. Is there any other final tidbits that you feel the need or called to share regarding the subject?
Which one? We went all.
I know, right? We went everywhere, but just
the soulmate one, or
I know, right? I know.
The only thing I can say is, if you're talking about relationships, there's no way to talk about relationships without love. So I think just start. If you don't know where to start, just start there. I always say people, because love is expansive. I don't think we are going to be able to grasp it in one lifetime. It's just infinite, right? So I think if you are listening to this and you're like, okay, well, I hear what you're saying. I don't know that much about love. Where do I start? So I say start with these 3 things. 1, God is love. 2, love is not selfish. 2, love serves. It comes to serve you. And sometimes how it serves, you might not like it, but it will always serve you to make you better. And if you're in a marriage, in a relationship, and you're going through things, put those 3 things at the pinnacle of your relationship, at the core of it. And you should be able to at least lay 1 brick to try to build it back up again, because it's not selfish, and it does come to serve. It's about serving one another. So yeah, I think that'll be it.
A perfect summation, honestly. Yeah, I would say the exact same thing. I'm gonna really note that. And also just like it's important that we find it within ourselves before we search for it externally. I think is a common thing I've seen amongst a lot of people my age, is being able to allow yourself to love yourself before you wait for somebody else to do it.
So key. And that's why I say don't let go of the form, because sometimes we'll put those expectations on ourselves. I'm a big firm believer not to have any expectations in relationships. And when I say it, people are like, what do you mean? I won't know what the heck is going on. But that's not true. Instead of placing expectation, place acceptance there. You'll get there faster with acceptance than expectation. If there's somebody that you're not supposed to be with, and you accept who they are right in front of you, and they tell you the truth about themselves, you'll grow out of that relationship faster than holding this expectation of what you feel like they should be for you. But that goes for us first, right? Placing a certain expectation of not loving yourself at every level where you're at. You know what I mean? So I always say that. I say that any kind of insecurity we really have is just really detachment from the source of love, right? Because love is full, it's abundant, it lacks nothing. So whoever you meet, you're just seeing a reflection of the love that you already have within you. And then you guys join together and you just shine brighter, but that's it. They can't fulfill you. It's just not, that's too much of a heavy weight. They're not going to be able to do that.
No. So. Oh my God. Course. Yeah, and I mean, you can learn that the hard way, or you can just take it from you and take advantage of the fact that we have these mentors that we've incarnated.
Absolutely. Angels. Yeah, that's what I liked. I was gonna say that with the soulmates, that's how I like to look at it. I just think we have angels, because I think people, when they look at my husband and I, because we started so young and we've grown together and things like that, they'll be like, that's your soulmate. But I just say, no, he's my angel. I think he's my angel. He's not necessarily my soulmate. I think that the deep connection that we have within, and the alignment that we have spiritually, mentally, has allowed us to deal with our soul, right? Because I think the main part of dealing with your soul is making sure that you don't identify who you are with your experiences that you've had within your soul.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why I say I don't want to mate with anybody's soul.
Yes.
Those souls are in trauma.
A lot of baggage.
Right. It's a lot of baggage. Absolutely. That's why you need a seat on there. You need the spirit is supposed to be able to guide the soul, if that makes any sense. It's supposed to guide the soul so that the soul is like the mediator between the spirit and your physical body, because many people are driven by their soul. They're driven by their emotions, and then it fuels their actions. And unfortunately, sometimes those emotions, because they're supposed to be fleeting, I always say emotions are fleeting. You got to act like you're on a highway. And the emotion is passing, and some emotions are Maseratis, right? In sports cars, they go by really fast, and some are like that old putt-putt.
And you just gotta observe.
When is this emotion gonna leave? It takes longer, right? But as long as you don't hitchhike, because that's what it wants you to do. It wants you to hitchhike. Get in the car with it. And then now you become that emotion, right? That's when you get into dealing with anxiety and depression and all things like that. Don't hitchhike it. Emotions are supposed to be fleeting. So that's why I can't necessarily believe like, oh, the soul just wants it what it wants. Because if it's the seat of the emotions, and emotions are supposed to be indicators and messages that are transitional, then I can't, you know, so I rather, my husband is more like my angel. He has elevated, I think the spirit elevates your soul to where now when you experience you take in the things from your five senses and you experience those things, then you're able to kind of transcend the things that are happening to you because you hold on to who you authentically, really, truly, infinitely are, not what's right in front of you, you know? So, yeah.
Mine, I'm gonna immediately set up a little session with you because this was, I can't believe you just offered this. Like, this is you.
Absolutely. I love the way, once I saw you interview Temp, I was like, oh my gosh, you're so I love the way you answer. I ask questions. My company is called Interact. It's called Interact because it means internally ask. And my friend, my family and friends, they'll call me Boo. Some of them will call me Boo, like Baby Oprah, because of the questions that I ask. Kind of like, you know, you seem like it's like one little question, but it's going like literally to your heart and soul and things like that. And so I thought the questions that you asked her were so like thoughtful, considerate, like, and the way you were taking in the way she answered and how you bounced back your questions. I was like, oh, yeah, I wouldn't mind, you know, doing an interview with her because of that. So absolutely.
Oh, that means the world to me. Yeah, I mean, I try to have organic conversation and really talk about just, like, blow past the BS. Like, let's get into the core of it, the root of it, as we were talking about earlier. So I'm so grateful that you were so open. Let the people know where they can find you, where they can find your work, and all of that.
Oh yes, and I'll make sure I send the link as well to you because the website's kind of long for the book. But it's called 7 Stages of Loving Relationships, but I think it's like a /Wix site because I made it with the wixsite.com. But that's where you can find that. And if you just really Google Sharla K, you can find all of my music there. If you want to check out any of my podcasts, I come on IG Live 10:30 p.m. Thursday nights, Friday nights, and Sunday nights. Yeah, and I am going to start a Clubhouse room chat, and I'm going to start YouTube, but that will all be under Forever Friends, the name of my podcast. So.
Oh yay! Awesome. I have to follow you on Clubhouse. I love that. I'm obsessed. It's such a good.
Well, I haven't started yet. Everybody, once they, you know, I've been on it for a while, but you know, because I juggle a lot, I've had it in my mind to start the room because everyone's like, Sharla, you got to get on there because people need to hear what you're saying and so on. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna start it. So my aim goal is by February I'll be on Clubhouse and YouTube. So when I do, I will definitely send you the link to do that. But I want to definitely get the book. It's, you know, maybe I'll do a blurb about that. It's basically the 7 stages that I believe all relationships go through. Doesn't matter what relationship it is. And it's 7 stages, and the stages are attractiveness is the first one, connection is the second one, service is the third one, growth is the fourth one, harmony is the fifth one, sixth one is oneness, and the last one is fulfillment legacy. So it's basically tells you the process of going through relatability, growing into a partnership, and then growing into oneness, which I feel like is the ultimate goal, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my God, I love it. We'll definitely check that out. That's incredible. And I love that it transcends any kind of relationship, you know, familiar relationship.
That's what I'm all about. That's why I provide the fundamental principles, because I think your question you asked, which was such a great question of like, okay, we're breaking the norms of what we saw before. Yeah. But unless it's rooted in the fundamental principles, that's what I see occurs. You think you're breaking the patterns, but you're really just creating, you know what I mean, another toxic cycle of something else, but you don't know because it looks different, but it's really not. When you look at it rudimentary or fundamentally, it's not. So you need the foundation so that anything that you want to apply, you want it to be on something that's unwaverable, unshakable, right? That won't move, right? With the culture or societal changes. You need to build it on something that's solid, right?
Yeah, so. Of course. How could you want anything else? Oh my God. Well, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Oh, anytime. I would love to do this in person at some point, so we'll wait for the day.
I'd like to come to sunshine.
I can't wait for you to come back. And yeah, I'm gonna link all of your stuff. I highly encourage everyone that was able to just like get the nectar of this conversation to really follow through it and check out more of your work and in your writing. But all in all, I'm so appreciative. I'm so
Thank you.
grateful.
I'm so proud of you and all the work you're doing. I think what I love about you is your heart of growth. You're always seeking to grow and to know.
Yeah,
so I appreciate that.
Exhausting.
That's really good. But if I say it, the last thing I just want to say to anyone is that it's possible. I think that's the main thing. So many people feel like they're numb to love because love has hurt them, but love does not hurt you. People may have hurt you. Misinterpretations of love might have hurt you, but love doesn't ever hurt.
No.
So always believe in love. If you don't believe in love, then you don't want to do that because you won't know who you are. Don't think that you can feel like, well, I don't want to do anything with the relationships. It's not going to bother me. Just understand that you're always in a relationship. Even if you're single right now, you're in a relationship with yourself. You're in a relationship with your creator, even if you don't acknowledge it or not. And that is all about, to me, I feel like this is a journey of unconditional love. So just believe in it. Believe in it wholeheartedly. You deserve it to believe in it. So never, ever, ever give up on love because equate it to giving up on yourself. Don't do that.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God, equate it to giving up on yourself. It's our why. It's the reason. Love is everything.
It is the reason for everything here, and it is how you know who you are and what your purpose to do here. So don't think that because you're closing out another physical person and saying that you're closing out love, you are closing out yourself as well. There's no way to detach it. Not possible. So don't give up. It's possible. Believe in it. Let's prepare for it. We prepare for everything else. Do your best to try to prepare for it. Listen to, shows like Jasmine has other places, because I do think that's what our disadvantage is that we weren't preparing for it. It's no one talks about it, on deeper levels and things like that. So unfortunately, here we are. But if you feel like it, just like anything, just be open to it, believe in it, and prepare for it. Just know that no matter how much you prepare for it, still take in whatever lessons it brings you. So that's it.
Oh my God, child, I love it. I love it. Oh my God, what a powerful way to end this. I'm so grateful. And check out all her stuff. I'll link everything. You can continue to find me here on YouTube, on Instagram as well. And otherwise, I just hope you all walk with faith, with hope, and knowing that you are deserving and worthy. And all beautiful things.
Absolutely.